Also, the Blender Foundation need some bug. Also, if the word is not so good, so which are local groups of users of Linux, and they can bring on the use of Blender. Okay. Thank you for listening. I've finished. I would like to show only the last animation in Blender. Thank you.
Thanks. Now a 2-minute break, and while Jason is setting up his stuff, I would like to mention that at the desk with the registry ladies there is an iPod that has been found. So if someone is missing his or her iPod in a nice sock, then please contact the ladies at the registration desk. Okay, let's continue with Jason Gumster and how to successfully produce animation over the internet.
I'm loud, but I'm not that loud. So yes, stop me if you heard this one before. I want to make an internet animation, and I need a team. Can anybody else here join me? Yeah, you hear that? This is something that you see probably at least once a week on blenderartist.org, yeah? I'm going to do an animation. I need a team. Who's with me? And then either it works, you got 3 or 4 people saying, yeah, and then it fizzles, or nobody says, well, who the hell are you? I'm not going to help you out, right? You get those sorts of things happening. So this entire presentation is designed for those of you on Blender Artists and whatnot who want to do an animation online and have an online team, this will hopefully get you closer to making it actually happen. That's my plan. I should probably let you know who I am. That's why I put that slide there. I'm Jason Van Gumster. I run a small animation studio, Hand Turkey Studios. We're in Richmond, Virginia. And I have a history of making animations using an internet crew. And I've made, how many of you are aware of the 48-hour film project? Yeah, it's designed for live action. And I've, for 3 years now, assembled a team and created at least 4-minute film in 2 days. And it's animated, and over half of the crew is not based in Richmond, Virginia. I use people from all over the world for it. I'll get more into that in a second. So, some basic, clear steps on how to actually go about this whole process of making a animation using an internet crew. It's a tough thing to do because you need a very specific sort of person on your crew. They need to be very talented, but they also have to be self-driven. They have to be self-motivated because you can't be behind them sort of with a whip the entire time, especially on longer projects. So, step number 1, do something awesome, or at the very least, do something notable. The idea here is you want to make sure that you have a level of credibility. You can do a great tutorial. You can make great art yourself. Make a still. Make a still image, a short movie of your own that's even shorter than what you want to do. Any of these things where your name is out there. Hey, how you doing? Sorry. Well, your name is out there when you're actually a person that people can recognize as doing something decent, or at least doing something interesting. You may fail magnificently, but do it loudly. That way people at least are interested in you. I have one person who joined the first 48-hour project is Bob Holcomb, who's a brilliant developer and actually has written part of the compositing stuff in at least the 2.4. I don't know if he's up in 2.5 yet. But he actually came to me and said, I didn't join this team because you're any sort of good leader or anything. I just want to see the next crazy thing you're going to try. That's all right. He's on the team, right? Step 2, obvious, be part of the community. And yes, that doesn't mean just go on Blender Artist. That means, for those of you who are already here, you've already come halfway, right? You're at a conference. You're in meet space. You're talking to people and meeting them and doing that sort of thing. You want to go to a Blender conference. You go to SIGGRAPH. Even IBC or NAB is a good thing. If you're local and you have a bug or start a bug, the idea is, while it's good to be behind a computer, you want to meet people face to face. Again, this goes back to making yourself known and credible, and at least, likable, possibly. People, even if you suck, people like working with you if you're pleasant to be around. At the very least, they can do the awesome work and you can bring them coffee. Next thing, you want to be smart about your project. Pick something doable. If you're going to try to do a feature film online and you don't have your stuff together, you're going to fail. And it won't be magnificent. It'll kind of just fizzle out. And so the whole feeling magnificent thing doesn't work out so well. Be smart. There's a handful of things that you want to do when you pick a project to make it worth doing and make it something that can be accomplished. Nobody wants to be part of something that didn't work out, or worse, just fizzled to nothing. Projects that work. You want small projects. I'm talking, if you want to do an animation, probably don't want to do it more than 5 minutes. If you can do 2 minutes or 30 seconds, all the better. Short turnaround time. This is part of the reason why the 48-hour films work so well. I only had to get a commitment of 2 days. They didn't sleep for those 2 days, but it was only 2 days. That's very important because the type of people that you want to help you out, they're supposed to be talented. They're supposed to be good at what they do, which means they don't have a lot of free time because they're doing things that are making them money. And if you don't have a reward, a financial reward for them, there has to be some sort of fulfillment, some other sort of reward, something that makes it worth doing, a challenge. That's the next thing, an interesting challenge, because that makes it worth doing, right? If you have money, that's better. But if it's at least something like, well, you want to do a 4-minute what and win? All right, let's try it. If it fails, it's at least nothing off my back. It's only 2 days. That's where that came out. And at every turn, look for opportunities to cut corners. When we did the 48-hour film project each time, we had to deliver at standard definition. So you're talking 720 by 480. This is NTSC, so U.S. Standard definition. So 720 by 480 at 30 frames a second. Well, you can cut corners there, right? If you do wide aspect but letterbox it, then you're 720 wide, but it's only 405 pixels tall, so you've already cut out 75 pixels. That's 75 pixels you don't have to render. Then on top of that, you can say, well, I'm going to work in 24 frames a second, and then convert afterwards. So I just cut out another 6 frames a second that I don't have to animate. Good times. Find good ways to cut corners, and don't necessarily cut corners on quality. You can cut corners in a lot of interesting ways and still maintain your quality. That's also what makes part of the challenge interesting. Another thing that a lot of people overlook, good infrastructure. It's essential. If you're going to try and manage your project over Blender artists, or if you just decide you're going to set up a forum, that's not enough. It's kind of just that simple. There's not enough organizational tools to make that worthwhile, especially if you're trying to do a project that has a quick turnaround time. That was unexpected. All right, well, anyway, infrastructure tools that I'm talking about. You want and need version control. So we used Subversion. I mean, if you want to use Git, Bazaar, any of these sort of things, that's fine. But version control is essential, especially for collaborative work. We're taking a note here from software development, open source software development, but if you don't do this and somebody makes a mistake and screws up everything, there's no way back unless you have version control. Task tracker. This one I learned the hard way. For the first 2 projects, we actually used MediaWiki for our entire management. It can be done. It's ugly, and I wouldn't recommend doing it, especially if you don't know wiki speak text typey. It's a pain in the ass. Don't try it. So we used, in the most recent one, we used Redmine, but you could use Track, you could use Bugzilla, again, taking a note from software development, but you want to have some sort of way to assign a task to an artist or technician, and that task is a small task that they can accomplish in that period of time, and you can see what their progress is, and they can turn it back in. It's very, very important to have that because as a producer, you know the state of your project as you're going on through it. But as an artist, you can see how much other stuff has to get done before you succeed or fail. Deadlines are incredibly important because if you don't have those, there's no stimulus, there's no reason to actually get things done. Collaborative documentation, wiki. You want to be able, not only is this important for tracking what you've done so that you can do it again later or perhaps share it with other people, but it's also important so that everyone else on your crew knows what's going on. You have your story outline. Throw that on a wiki. People can adjust it and edit it, but it's there. You have your procedures and policies, like this is how the rig works. This is where in the directory structure you can find the character models. That sort of stuff, that all gets documented on there. Then again, documentation, not something you do afterwards. 9 times out of 10, good documentation you do first. So you get that stuff in there first, and then your team knows, one, what they're doing, and they can hopefully trust that you know what you're doing. right? Hopefully. Also, long-form discussion. This way you can, if in your planning stages, you can involve more of your crew with it. So you want to have a mailing list, an email list of some sort. A list serves the best way to do it. And that's cheap to set up, so why not? I mean, you could have a big CC list where everyone's sort of copied on there, but it's just annoying. So it takes, what, a few extra seconds to set up a listserv? Do it. It's worth it. Then you want real-time communication. IRC is the easiest one. IRC, but you can use IM or whatever, but someplace that when you're working on the project, you can go back and forth and talk to people immediately about what's going on, and you can have an open room and have, more importantly, you can have logs for people on your crew who weren't there, right? If you're planning out a character stage and your character modeler doesn't happen to be there, you can at least get the design out, have that logged, and say, by the way, this is what we decided. You get to model it. But it works. And then the one that we learned most recently is very helpful is live video. If you want to do Skype, that's fine. If you want to do, we used a TinyChat for having multiple cameras. It's a cool website, tinychat.com. I don't work for them, but it's sweet. You go there, you can have multiple cameras logged in. The advantage is twofold. For a short project, like a 48-hour film project, you can let people in, they can see you work, and even people who aren't part of the project can give you energy to keep working forward, because at least you see that there are people interested in seeing you fail or succeed, again, magnificently. But the other half of it is for modelers or for animators. I mean, as artists, we're visual people. We take that visual sort of stimulus. So it's a lot easier for me to say, rather than type out, the character should jump and pause and hold, than just get a camera out and say, and they say, oh, he should jump kind of like an idiot. And then we'll go forward from there. Another one that's very important, clearly define team roles. And most importantly is you don't want to overextend yourself or ask too much of your team. This is a problem you see in a lot of internet web productions because everyone wants to say, oh, well, we're all on equal footing, we're all the same sort of people, this is a communal sort of thing. It doesn't work. You need to have a hierarchical setup where everyone has a limited task, they know what they're supposed to do, and they know who they're supposed to report to. Or more importantly, if they have a question, they know who to ask. Because if you don't have that, then you basically have a bunch of people yelling at each other and nothing's going to get done. So you want to have clear roles. You want to have a producer. You want to have a director. You want to have someone who's tasked with writing the script. Even if you have a lot of input on the script, you need one writer, right? You want to, and then there's roles that, if you're coming from this as an animator, there's roles that we totally forget, like sound design. That's usually the weakest part of any sort of animation that you see when people don't quite have all their stuff together. You want to have good sound design. It means, again, go out, meet people that aren't just animators, that aren't just modelers, that aren't just Blender users. Talk to somebody who knows how to make music. Talk to somebody who knows how to do sound effects. Find these people and find them to work with them. And then let them know that's your job. They can take input from anybody else that they want, but they're the one that's ultimately responsible for it. And again, if you don't do that, you're doomed for failure. This is the other really big one. If you have done all of these other steps up to this point, you have at least illustrated that you may have your shit together. Then you can do this. Going into Blender Artist and saying, I need a crew, can somebody help me please, will fail you. Go to a person individually. Find an artist that you like. Find someone's style that you like. Approach them directly. They can be phone, they can be email, it can be IM, whatever, but talk to them directly. The reason for this is people kind of like to be appreciated. They want to be recognized for what they do. So if you jump online and says, I need help, two problems happen. One, you get a lot of people who don't know what they're doing saying, yeah, I'll help you, which that's not going to work very, very well for anything. And the people who are worth the time, who can actually help you out, they don't have that level of appreciation. They're like, well, I'm not going to work for this guy. I don't know who he is, and he obviously doesn't know who I am, so there's no level of trust. There's no level of respect. But if I go up to you and say, your models are excellent, and I think I have a project that your work would work really well in. I'm pointing at you. You go to somebody and say, that's what I like, and they say, oh, well, at least he's seen my stuff. He likes my stuff. And maybe for just half a second, you could fool them into working for you. It worked. But that's That's what works. You want to approach people individually. If you find out at a point in time that you need more help, then you can do an open call. But at that point in time, hopefully you have 2 or 3 other people that can help you do the open call. Say, well, I'm working with this guy. And again, this all lends to your credibility as somebody producing animation and who can hopefully get it done. The results. I was debating whether or not to show it because I'm not sure how much time I end up with here. But the most recent result was Gray Justice, Puncher of Men. How many of you guys saw the Suzanne Animation Festival? Sweet, that means I don't have to play it unless you guys really want me to. Please don't. Yeah. Gray Justice, Puncher of Men was our third 48-hour film project. We produced that film. It ended up being a total running time of about 5 minutes, probably about 4 minutes worth of animation. The credits was a minute by themselves. And we finished that in 2 days. The only thing we started with were partially modeled characters that Jonathan had put together half an hour before everything started, pretty much. Everything else was built on the fly. We rigged it on the fly. We rendered it using render farms in 2 different countries. We had 3 different render farms, one in New York, one in Alabama, and one in Wales. And this thing had to be produced and rendered in that period of time. So you have a team. We started out with 28 people, and actually, because we did this live, we did this on IRC and TinyChat. While we were working, we picked up 2 more people on our crew. So we ended up with 30 people on the crew, 18 of which were international, 18 of which were not located in Richmond, Virginia. And the project, I can honestly say, the project, 1, could not have been done without them, and it's better that they were there. And it's because of basically these steps. You go and you do something crazy, do something awesome, and do those things. So I won't play it again because you guys all saw it. But to review, 1, be awesome. And again, be awesome is sort of vague, and it's vague on purpose. You could be awesome as an artist. You could be awesome as a person. You could be awesome as a producer. You could be awesome as a technician. It doesn't matter, but you want to be awesome. Also, I should probably put in parentheses, don't be a dickhead. You want to be pleasant to be around. Number 2, join the community. That's your second step. Number 3, pick something feasible, something that can be done, or convince people that it might possibly be done. Number 3, pay attention to infrastructure. If you don't have that there, then you have no fallbacks. You have no way of doing that. So infrastructure is incredibly important, and it's one of those things like sound that's overlooked by people who are trained in animation but don't know the rest of the process that's around it. Number 5, again, clearly define your roles. Know who's doing what, when they're doing what, and have a hierarchy. Without it, as much as we would like to have a communal project where you don't sort of have any sort of roles, it's necessary in order to get done. It's, there's a stupid phrase. It's dictatorships get shit done. So at least in creative projects, we'll do it that way. And number 6, approach individuals for help. You want individuals. You want them to recognize that you've recognized their talent, and hopefully they'll work for you because, well, at least you're not a dickhead. So some additional notes worth noting because I couldn't fit them anywhere else in the slide list. 1, micromanagement is a common problem. Somebody who wants to do an animation, they're really passionate about it. This goes to overextending yourself. If you hire or bring someone on your team to do the modeling, if you bring someone on your team to do the rigging, don't go behind them and change it. Trust them to get it done. Or worse, don't look over their shoulder their entire time they're doing it. Go in, say, do you have it done yet? No? Okay, go faster. And then you go back to the other things you have to manage and take care of. If you try and noodle everything, the people who you approached individually, who you said you liked their work, well, they don't feel like you trust them to get it done. So you want to make sure that you don't micromanage what you're doing. Number 2, something that came out of the way we handled the 48-hour film project is the fishbowl idea. The fishbowl being you're a fish in a bowl, everybody can see you. there's some very interesting benefits to that. For instance, like I said, we got 2 extra people on our crew that we wouldn't have otherwise had because we did this in public, we did this live, and we let people watch. Also, you have people who are, just like the open movie projects, you have people in there who are basically rooting for you, saying, do it, or worse, or just as good, actually, you have people rooting for you to fail. Either way, they're there and they're watching, right? And that gives some level of energy. If somebody's rooting for you to fail, then you want to win out of spite. So it all works out for you. Number 2, or the third one on there is using a diverse pool of talent. This goes back again. You want to have people who are not just animators, who are not just 3D people. Have people who are painters. Have an illustrator. Have a traditional writer. Again, have your musicians. Have these sort of people, because not only are they going to bring their expertise to your project, but they're going to inform your project with knowledge and a whole cultural background that you probably don't have. And that's a good thing because it just makes things better. They'll give you an insight that you never even thought of. I've had sound people say, well, that animation could be a little bit tighter that way. Not necessarily because they knew anything about animation, but they just intuitively see something worked better a different way. And partially because they didn't, they weren't absorbed with it the way I was, and I couldn't see the mistakes that I was making. Same sort of deal. You want to have a diverse set because they actually make things better. Also, Redmine is a beautiful, beautiful tool, but because it's written in Ruby, or maybe because I set it up wrong, it was an absolute memory hog. We had, on the 48-hour film project, we had, I say, 20, at any given moment in time, we probably had 15 to 20 people accessing our Redmine installation simultaneously. And that spiked us up to 500 megs of RAM usage on my server, which, on a regular computer, I got 8 gigs at home, sweet. But on a web server, that's a little bit excessive, especially since I have to pay by the amount of RAM I use. So that's something to bear in mind. If you have a smaller project or if you have a longer-term project where you don't have as many simultaneous connections to it, Redmine is great. Or if you can afford the RAM for it, Redmine is great. Otherwise, you may want to look into a different solution. But it's a fun solution. I love it. And the other thing, policies and conventions are great, but only when your crew adheres to them. If you set up a rig, one document where the bone layers are. Well, my facial controls are on this layer. My arm controls are on this layer. My IK legs are on this one. Set that stuff up, and again, document that stuff in the wiki. But you have to let the crew know that stuff's there. This is more, and that's on the rigging side. But on the production side, a big thing that you have to make sure of is file names. If they don't adhere to the structure of your file names, it makes it much more difficult for everyone to find out where things are. So not only do you have to create a policy, but you have to find a way to enforce it. And the easiest way to enforce it is to make sure that your crew knows it exists. So it's one of those things you want to keep sort of reinforcing. And of course, set a good example. Don't set up a policy and then break it yourself. I did that. So, next steps. The next thing, after all of this stuff, we can take away a couple things. At least on our projects, I believe we've got the production process down to a science. We kind of know when things have to be breaking down, especially in a short project like 48 hours. We know when things are supposed to happen and how that's supposed to do it. But there are some things that, you can always do polish and you can always do refinements. For instance, just like with any open project or any sort of film project, the sooner you have a script and the sooner you have a storyboard, and the sooner you have a storyboard and animatic that works, the better things are. If you can have that ahead of time, sweet. With a 48-hour project, you don't have that luxury because you're giving your topic before you start. But in that case, the more planning you do, the better. And this goes back to the infrastructure thing. For instance, I would like to use Blender Aid more in my productions because Blender Aid allows you to manage your projects better. And then hopefully have Blender Aid give access to things like subversion and these sort of things. Yes. Yay! Woohoo! And then I have it now. Well, I want to be able to merge them cleanly.